Ed Fitzgerald tries to get back on track, and Ohio's new execution method raises questions.
From the Battelle studio at WOSU at COSI, this is Columbus on the Record. Joining Mike Thompson this week, Joe Hallett, senior editor for the Columbus Dispatch. Ann Fisher, host of All Sides with Ann Fisher on 89.7 NPR News. Sandy Tice, Democratic strategist, and Mark Weaver, Republican strategist.
After a glitchy month, Ed Fitzgerald is trying to reboot his campaign for governor. The Democrat challenging John Kasich has named his new running mate. His first one, Eric Kearney, dropped out because of tax issues, so Fitzgerald has chosen Sharon Newhart of Yellow Springs. Newhart is an attorney. She has run for Congress twice and lost. She's a strong supporter of abortion rights. Joe Hallett, this gives Ed Fitzgerald the geographic diversity he was looking for and the gender diversity.
It does, but I'm not sure it's a big splash because she doesn't really have a political base and is not well known statewide. I'm not even sure she's well known in her area. She ran for Congress twice. She was defeated pretty handily, but why not? I mean, she ran in districts that are overwhelmingly gerrymandered to favor Republicans, so that's not a big deal. But she is an attractive candidate. She's smart. She's a lawyer in a prestigious law firm. I think you should get used to hearing the term war on women because she does bring that to the ticket.
Is that going to be her main message?
I think that'll be part of it. There was a big gender gap that benefited Sherrod Brown and Barack Obama. The women in Ohio are sick of these attacks on women's health care. They're sick of it. And the only place our numbers matter is in the voting booths. And I think we're going to see that talked about. Not only are they making it more difficult for women to get proper health care, but they're doing things like stacking the medical board with a bunch of zealots. This is wrong, and people have had it.
Well, Mary Taylor, she's been on the Kasich ticket since he first ran 4 years ago.
Sure, Mary Taylor's been a great lieutenant governor. I think Sharon Newhart's going to be a real drag for this ticket. She's a millionaire. She's well out of touch with the average Ohioan. A Democrat down there, David Israti, well-known candidate, blogged that she's the candidate of the 1%. That's how far out of touch she is. And she's extremely extreme, very extreme on abortion rights. You've got to remember, the Washington Post poll says even among women, 71% of women think there shouldn't be abortions after 20 weeks. She's well out of step with Ohio. She brings almost nothing to the ticket, as Joe pointed out. This is a weak choice after an abomination of a rollout with Eric Kearney.
From what I understand, she's pretty good in fundraising. And when you talk about 1%, that's what Fitzgerald is about 1 percentage point behind Kasich in the last Quinnipiac poll. So that might be a critical 1% that she might help bridge.
And she passes the first test, and that is that I don't think she's going to hurt Ed Fitzgerald at all. I think you will see the campaign adopt a strategy used by Terry McAuliffe, who won the governorship in Virginia, and that is that they did really attack the Republican, I can't remember his name now, but Cuccinelli, on women's issues, on abortion, and so forth, and it worked very well there.
Fitzgerald's running mate announcement came after he picked up a key endorsement up in Cleveland.
You know, and I've had the opportunity to watch him, closely over the last few years, and I will tell you that he has taken the helm of a county that was in a great turmoil and transition, and he's done that in a way that has created credibility and stability in this county.
Sandy Tice, it took a while, for political junkies, it took a while for Frank Jackson to endorse Ed Fitzgerald. Does this help him bridge the gap to the African-American vote?
I think it does. I think Fitzgerald has a strong relationship with the African-American voters anyway. Former Congressman Stokes was there the day he announced, but it's not going to hurt to have the mayor of Cleveland on your team.
Although the mere fact that it's news that a Cleveland Democrat endorses another Cleveland Democrat suggests how weak a rollout Ed Fitzgerald has and how much trouble he's having consolidating his own base. And let's not forget, Todd Portune continues to be out there campaigning. We'll see if he files, but this is not fun for Ed Fitzgerald to have a prominent Democrat opposing him.
Time lag, maybe it's only of interest to political junkies, but it's of interest to political junkies because it does raise questions. So
Yeah, because it always comes down to raising money, and that's basically the slow rollout and the lack of enthusiasm translates into fewer dollars.
But like Ann said, John Kasich is running neck and neck with a person most people don't know is the guy who cleaned up Cleveland. Wait till we put a little money behind that. Kasich also has a challenge from the right. So when there's three people in the race, the math is all different.
What is the? We heard Todd Portune might decide by this week, by Friday of this week, and we're still waiting.
Next week.
What are the odds now? Does this announcement give him the announcement of the running mate, the endorsement from Mayor Jackson to Ed Fitzgerald? Does that mean Todd Portune says, okay?
I think so. I think it gives him cover to get out. I think, Newhart's from the same region of the state. I don't know. I think Todd Portune's been deluding himself that he's not going anywhere. He's not going to beat Ed Fitzgerald in the primary. And my guess is if he really does listen to Ohio, he will drop out.
Do you see this? 2 years ago, Mitt Romney came to Ohio, and he basically ran against President Obama and Obamacare, so the country was on the wrong track, and then he's talking about the economy. Here it's the opposite. The Democrats are running against John Kasich, anti-Kasich vote, and the economy's on the wrong track. So but they don't really, neither side had here's what we're going to do. I don't hear that yet from the Democrats.
It's too early. What I think is really, really helping the Democrats is the weakness of John Kasich. He reversed the recovery that got started under Ted Strickland. He embarrassed the state by getting caught on videotape calling a police officer an idiot twice during a speech on collegiality. The economy's in bad shape. That's going to drive this, and I think people are sick of our limited resources being used for things like moving jobs from Columbus to New Albany.
No one outside of this Ted Strickland think tank group and the ODP thinks that John Kasich has done a poor job on the economy. It's, in fact, if you lost 400,000 jobs under Strickland left a gaping hole in the budget. Kasich not only made up for all of that without raising taxes, but has put money back into the rainy day fund, which is good fiscal management. I think Ohioans will appreciate that on election
We just
day.
heard that the Ford auto plant may be laying off half their workforce through 2015, which could be pretty critical. The point being that really what it boils down to is that question they always ask people is, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And it's a very personal thing when it comes to voting on the economy ultimately. And by the way, things could change drastically in the next 6 to 8 months, which is critical.
We are now tracking worse than the federal recovery. It used to be we were on even par with it. Then at the end of the Strickland years, we were ahead of it. Now we're behind it. There's concrete evidence that shows that the recovery has been reversed.
Interesting. Barack Obama has introduced us to this notion of 5 years later, it's my predecessor's fault. We don't hear Democrats talking about that when it comes to John Kasich. We know that Ted Strickland hurt this economy. Kasich is rebuilding it.
All right. It is January of an election year. That means it is time to change, or at least try to change, the rules for voting. It's become an Ohio tradition. It lasts all year long. Lawmakers are considering a bill that would shorten early voting, eliminate the Golden Week, where you can register and vote at the same time. There are also possible changes to mailing absentee ballots applications. Where have we heard that before? And there is a push for online voter registration. That's kind of new. City ties the Golden Week. You can register and vote at the same time. It's convenient, but it does open the door that something might slip through the cracks, and I think that's why people want to do away with it. Why not?
I think the people who want to do away with it are the people who like that they live in a state where it's easier to buy a gun than it is to vote. And they want to make it more difficult to vote because they don't want more people voting because that tends to help the Democrats. Technology has helped us. We've heard of voter fraud for decades, and no one has showed us any.
Well, that's not true, of course. There have been acknowledged cases of voter fraud.
They've
been very
small.
But let's remember, we have 2.3 million working women in the state. Only 800 sexual discrimination complaints filed last year. 0.03%. Yet we wouldn't propose doing away with the enforcement system for sexual discrimination. It's a civil right to vote, and we want to protect it. It's a civil right not to be discriminated against. John Husted has it right. Voting needs to be easy, and cheating needs to be hard.
So the absentee ballots, one of the changes would prohibit counties from mailing unsolicited absentee ballot applications to everybody. But it seems John Husted comes in and says, okay, I'll mail them. And he's going to do that again for the primary. So,
and he, really by law you have to. After Bush v. Gore, Supreme Court ruled that you can't have counting in one county different than counting in another. And if one county does absentees and another doesn't, arguably have a federal challenge. When it's done throughout the whole state, you do waive that issue.
You know, that said, I mean, isn't John Husted, as Secretary of State, after that audit was reported on the fraud, didn't he say, we don't need to fix this? It's not that much of it's not a problem.
What's that, voter fraud?
Right, voter fraud.
There's only so much that's been reported, but like most crimes, there's lots of them that happen that we don't know about.
Yeah,
And as a result, we ought to prosecute the ones we do know about.
I don't think anyone disagrees with that.
Yeah.
But it just isn't happening much. I think
Like
Franklin
sex
County led
discrimination.
the state with voter fraud in 2012. There were 17 cases out of hundreds of thousands of votes. I think, frankly, I have always thought that Hughes does a pretty good job. He's led a lot of reforms. The one reform he's calling for now is online voter registration. Is very good. It's got the bipartisan backing everywhere but in the legislature. And there's pretty strong evidence that Republican leaders are trying to keep that from happening. So I think he deserves some kudos for pushing that. I know the Ohio election officials are all in favor of it, but
Why not do it? I mean, we pay our bills online. We register. We apply for credit cards online.
It's very popular in other states. Well, I think Oregon.
Oregon votes. Well, they vote.
Well, they vote online,
They vote
yeah.
by mail or by online. Yeah.
I think the Republicans in charge of the State House don't want to make it easier for more Democrats to vote, and that's why they're blocking it. There's no good government reason not to do this.
But isn't to have a computer and to vote online, isn't that primarily somebody who has a computer, upper income, middle income folks? I mean, the organizations would bring in banks of computers to centers and things like that.
But
I'm
it still
sure.
would open it up to different types of
Well, and
people,
the
and people
notion-
with more difficult schedules to juggle.
Younger people.
Right, but the notion that there's no fraud available with a computer, tell that to the Target users right now who've had their data taken, is as long as we can protect against fraud, we want to make it easy to register to vote. It is not easier to buy a gun. You clearly haven't bought one recently.
I just
When
did.
I bought one recently, it was about a half an hour process. When I registered to vote, it was a postcard and I mailed it in. Both are important. Both are rights. It ought to be easy to vote and hard to achieve.
It is a
Where's the guy?
ridiculous use of the priorities of the General Assembly to focus all this time and attention on limiting the ability of people to vote. That's one of their priorities. I think it's insulting.
It's protecting a civil right. Voting is a civil
Well,
right.
why not?
Every person
It's
who
like-
commits a fraud is a civil rights violation, and you don't seem to care about that civil rights
I do. I
violation.
just don't think it's a big priority. We have 7 people in that
No, it's
audit.
many more than that, and you don't make that argument for sex discrimination, which is 3/100ths of 1%.
We're not talking about sex
But they're both civil
discrimination.
rights. That's the key.
17, well, back to online voting registrations, 19 states already do it. It saves money. It makes it easier for people to vote. It's proven to be secure. I mean, just pass it. It makes sense.
You guys aren't packing right now, are you?
You told us not to.
That's right. Gun-free zone here at COSI. In Ohio and other states, executions have become fairly routine. Most lethal injections at the prison in Lucansville have happened with little known trouble, but this week's execution of Dennis McGuire was different. McGuire was executed for the 1989 brutal rape and strangulation and stabbing murder of Joyce Stewart, who was in her early 20s and pregnant at the time. But the process in the execution chamber was different this time because Ohio officials used different drugs. Witnesses say McGuire groaned and gasped for air and struggled against his restraints. It took about 15 minutes. All the witnesses said they had not seen this scenario in previous executions. Mark Weaver, based on the witness accounts, was this cruel and unusual punishment?
No, and I don't want to talk about this as a Republican. I want to talk about this as someone who's been a prosecutor and has worked on death penalty cases in the Attorney General's office. What happened, as described by Alan Johnson from the Dispatch, is what doctors call gasping respiration followed by apnea. And it is what will happen to most of us if we die by either heart attack or stroke. It's a sad thing to talk about, but that's what the last moments of life are. The Supreme Court said that in the gas chamber case, in the Gomez case of 92, they said that that was not cruel and unusual punishment, and gas chamber executions are 15 minutes of gasping and struggling, and that continues to be a mode of execution in some states, and the Supreme Court has said that that is not cruel and unusual punishment.
So what happens now? Is this, if the prison authorities are investigating it, they will likely see some of the things that you have said and see if that's the case, what happened here. Is it enough to put a moratorium and
Well,
put a
there's
stop to the death
litigation
penalty?
as well.
Yeah, well, there soon will be.
Or soon
I
will be,
talked
right.
to Alan Johnson before I came over here, his colleague, and he'd witnessed this. Well, I think the 18th execution he's witnessed. And he said there certainly will be court challenges, and he said it's likely that they will delay the next execution, which is scheduled for Gregory Lott on March 19th. And it was Alan's opinion that he would be very surprised if we ever saw this concoction of drugs used again. I mean, it clearly was a botched execution.
Which leaves the question pending then, what concoction of drugs, because the options are shrinking all the time. You cannot get pharmacies to supply the drugs they need. It's just a strangulation now of that method, and that's the question.
You know, you're right there. The Eighth Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishment, but the law, the Constitution, does not specify that there be pain-free executions. And so the question is, how much pain is admissible before it becomes cruel and unusual? I'm not sure. That's how we humanly
it's hard to
determine
measure.
that.
We'll never know. Now, there's a subset of people, and I'm not one of them, who says, the victim of this guy, who isn't talked about as much as she should be, she had her throat cut, and she was left to die in the woods with her unborn baby. Some people say, let's do the same thing. I'm not one of those folks, but I will say this. The law of the land, what voters have elected people to put this law in, is that the person should be dead at the end of the procedure. And there's no easy way or sanitary way to do that. And when we think there is, that's when we get all caught up with questions like this.
So, I mean, Sandy, there was some of the critics of the previous method, the 3-drug method. One of those drugs was a paralyzing agent that would have prevented somebody from gasping and pulling at restraints. And so this may have been happening all along, but we just didn't know it because one drug paralyzed the person. I mean, there's got to be no real easy, clean way to do this.
There's not an easy, clean way, and there are mountains of studies that show that capital punishment's not a deterrent and it costs more money. So why don't we just change the name to the Department of Vengeance if this is what we're going to be about?
It is a specific deterrent, though. We know that these killers who have killed before will never kill again. So it's undoubtedly a specific deterrent. And for those who say just put them in death row for the rest of their life, since '84 we've had 10 escapes from death rows in America, in Texas, Louisiana, and Virginia, and you cannot keep them for sure away from other inmates and wardens and
We've
visitors.
also had equal number or more of folks who have been on death row who've been exonerated.
Which is why the appeal system is important, and that's what makes death penalty so expensive, is because appeals beyond what's meritorious, they go on in some cases for 20 and 30 years.
Mark, I know what you mean about deterrent there, but I think what most people generally think of as a deterrent is it deters other new crimes by new people. That's generally what
There's
people
an argument
think
about that. There's evidence on both sides for general deterrence. There's only evidence on one side for specific. There's very few people who are willing to willfully kill another person. And someone who's willing to do it once is willing to do it again.
Yeah, so I mean, and I'm not arguing one way or the other, but incarceration can achieve the same.
Not if they escape, or not if they commit crimes in prison, as the death row inmates did in the late 90s when they had a riot on death row.
What's interesting now, though, is we're seeing people who were very supportive of the death penalty now come out against it. Paul Pfeiffer is a Supreme Court justice. He chaired the Senate Judiciary Committee when we reinstated the death penalty. Jim Petro has written a book about it. He was the Attorney General who oversaw our death penalty cases. I think there are a lot of questions about whether we have the right people locked up.
Joe, do you see this fading away? We're seeing fewer and fewer death penalty convictions and sentences now. The pace has slowed. There's been more moratoriums, more questions about even the, quote, lethal injection, which is the most humane method. Do you think maybe not a law gets passed to do away with it, but it just fades away?
I don't know if it fades away, but I think I feel a little bit like public sentiment is starting to turn against capital punishment. I haven't really seen any polls on it. I think it strongly still favors capital punishment. If you read the reader comments to our online story, I mean, it's like this guy got what he deserved and more. So
that is not a good measurement.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I sense, in the absence of polling, that there is a beginning of a change of opinion.
Okay. This is a key time for Columbus City Schools and its current and former leaders. State Auditor Dave Yost's office has wrapped up its investigation into alleged data rigging and grade changing. The changes have already started in the district. Board President Carol Perkins this week announced she's resigning from the board. The new president of the board promised to end the feel-good, hands-off approach that the board has been operating under over the past few years. And Fisher, first to the investigation, what are the tea leaves saying? Any indication that we'll see some surprises in this report? It's been very well reported over the past year
It
and a
has
half.
been, and I think the dispatch did a pretty good job of following the subpoenas. It gives you an idea of some of the things they're looking at, so there may not be any surprises per se, but they also might have been just going on something of a fishing expedition. They might have been doing the subpoenas to plug some holes. There's lots of reasons why a lot of a lot of the things they asked for might have been coming out. But in general, I think the big stuff is what we're expecting, which is the scrubbing of the data and what data that may be expanded. That might be where the surprise is.
One of the key questions was should there be criminal charges against principals, administrators?
I think that hasn't Dave Yost already said that
He's
he
hinted.
would refer
Yeah.
to the prosecutor?
Here's one of the questions I'd like to have answered. When is David going to bring that same level of scrutiny to the charter schools that have these terrible records and seem to be getting money when they really don't have the students? I look forward to that audit, Dave.
Look, there are failing public schools, traditional public schools. There are failing charter schools, which are, of course, public schools. The problem is that traditional public schools can't be closed down, but there's a mechanism for closing failing charter schools. So Dave Yost doesn't have any business trying to close down a charter school. There's a mechanism for doing it. But having said that, if Dave Yost does have evidence of tampering with records, he ought to refer it to a prosecutor, and those folks ought to be prosecuted.
The policy governance model, which is what the school committee has been operating under, it came after the Bill Moss era, where he was wearing fatigues to the late Bill Moss. He was wearing fatigues to the meetings. Remember the time he pounded on the table for 20 minutes with his shoe, and they had to end the meeting. So, Joe, you can see why they said, let's just let the administration worry about the small stuff and we'll set the policy. But it went too far, perhaps.
Yeah, it did. I mean, they ignored their own internal auditor and watchdogs on this, and it just continued to snowball. We got, an anonymous tip on this in 2004, and Jennifer Smith Richards and Bill Bush just followed it to where we are now, which includes this week the school board president, Carol Perkins, resigning. She said it had nothing to do with this, but, one wonders because the audit results were presented to the board by Dave Yost. Did she see those and say, I'm out of here, or this looks bad, or I don't know. We won't know till next week, I guess.
You called it the feel-good, hands-off era, but a lot of people in the school district whose kids attend the schools and who pay the taxes didn't feel like it was a feel-good era. They felt like the school board wasn't paying any attention to them anymore. Now the new school board president is going to do this listening tour, and they've got to go out and make a special effort to listen to the people of the school district. And that tells me something that they have not been listening to them in the past.
But, Mark, in theory, you have a policy board that sets the policy and then the administrators implement it. In theory, that's how government should work, but there also has to be some oversight as well.
In democracy, citizens get the government they deserve, and the residents of the Columbus School District are learning this lesson the hard way. When you vote based on what the name is or not really knowing the person, sometimes you get bad people at the governing board, and it's the job of the voters to fix it.
All right, we got to get to our off-the-record parting shots this week, and this week it's a little different as we say congratulations and farewell to Joe Hallett. That short-timer is retiring after 4 decades of day-to-day journalism. He's going to leave it all behind, and we'll start with Mark Weaver.
Joe, someone said that 99% of the reporters give the other ones a bad name, but you're the exception to that rule. For your long career, Joe has done it all. You've seen it all, and for 42 years, he's forgotten most of it. We will miss you. Congratulations on a well-deserved retirement. A lot of people enjoyed reading your columns and your news stories. You've covered more presidents and governors and senators than most people could ever imagine. And hope you enjoy both your grandson and our Columbus Blue Jackets in your retirement.
Thank you.
Sandy.
Even when I worked at the Plain Dealer and Joe was at the Dispatch and I didn't like some of those people over there, he was always one of my favorite people, always a gentleman. I wish I could write like you. And I'm going to actually miss your fishing column. I hesitate to say that out loud, but I will.
And
Speaking of his fishing column, when he returned from one of his fishing trips back when I worked with him at the Toledo Blade State House Bureau, I had just gotten kicked out of a bill signing, and I was stomping over to the hearing where they were having hearings on the state budget, and I was infuriated, and I walked into the room, and Joe had just gotten back. I hadn't seen him yet, and his back was to me, and I said, "Joe, blah, blah." And he turned around and his face was covered with calamine lotion because he had gotten poison ivy on his trip. And I thought, this guy will show up for anything at the State House. That said, Joe has always been the kindest mentor and friend anyone could ever ask for in the business. And you're absolutely right. He makes all the rest of us look good.
Joe?
Well, thank you all. I think you all know how highly I care for you and respect the work you do in your various endeavors. And I will miss it. I'm looking forward to retirement, 42 years. I always say two things. One, I can't believe they really paid me to do this stuff. And two, I forgot what the other one was. Senility is already said it. But I do have a prediction.
Okay.
The ratings for this show will soar when I'm no longer
I
on.
don't know. Well, that brings me to, I've read Joe. He was always the second column I read every Sunday. First was the Buckeye Rants on the sports page. Then it was Joe's column on the editorial page. But he was on the second show, but he was among the first panelists of Columbus on the Record way back 8 years ago when we first started at the basement. There he is right there. You haven't changed a whole lot in 8 years.
I had
so
a
look
little
at
more
that.
hair, I think.
No, not really.
Well, we're counting
So anyway,
follicles now.
good luck to Joe. And Joe is the one person I believe when he says he is leaving his business to spend more time with his grandchild. I believe you. Others, not so much. That's Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. And at wosu.org/COTR. I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.